Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were both set for incredible USA Grand Prix. They qualified with sheer brilliance, impressed in the sprint race, and the world held its breath in anticipation of Sunday's grand spectacle. But fate had a different script. Misguided strategies left hearts shattered, yet it was the decisions made during the Friday qualifying that cast a shadow on their almost glorious weekends. Both drivers were caught cheating on the incredible track in Austin, Texas. Join us as we unveil the gripping tale of their alleged transgressions, scrutinize the fairness of the punishment, and ponder why this storm of controversy swirled around these two. So, don't go anywhere. The US Grand Prix was a brutal weekend for everyone involved. The temperatures were hot, the days were long, and the track was rough. The Circuit of the Americas often delivers incredible Formula One races due to the track layout. Two long straights are separated by some incredible looking corners in a range of speeds. If your car can't do everything at this track, then you're going to find yourself in trouble at some point. Max's win here was tight, but the sprint race was impressive. Hamilton held on to Max for 5 laps or so, but once Verstappen broke DRS, he comfortably built a gap, finishing 9.5 seconds ahead after 19 laps. Sunday's race was very different though. Max had to put in a real shift to win the US Grand Prix, his 50th so far. Starting from 6th and suffering from brake cooling problems, he was being hunted down by the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton at the end of the race, just holding on long enough to take the win. And that brings us to Hamilton. With 103 wins to his name, Max has many seasons to go before he'll even be within sniffing distance of Hamilton's record. While Lewis may be the most successful F1 driver in the sport's history, the last 2 seasons have given him almost no reason to celebrate. If he can't find a win in the remaining 4 races, it would be the 2nd season in a row, and only the 2nd season in his career that he hasn't added to that impressive race win record. This weekend at Austin, he was definitely the closest he has been though. After the race, Hamilton was asked if he felt he should have won his first race since the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix 686 days ago, had it not been for Mercedes' offset strategy. Hamilton was defiant. Yes, he said without hesitation. I do think we would have been in a position to fight with Max. We made our life a lot harder today than it needed to be. There are lots of areas where we could have been better. That was before Hamilton's car was found to be illegal though. As Max's brake condition worsened late on in the race, Lewis was taking huge chunks of time out of the Red Bull driver's lead every lap. If Mercedes had pitted him from his first stint a couple of laps earlier, who knows what could have been. They wanted to try and do a one-stop race, but Hamilton's tyres were dying too quickly, so they had to abort and do a compromise 2-stop. If they had just gone for a 2-stop strategy, that may have made what followed all the more painful. If Hamilton had won the race only to be disqualified, the agonizing screams from the Mercedes garage would have been heard across the state of Texas. There wouldn't have been a desk in Austin that was safe from Toto's wrath. After the race, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were referred to the stewards for technical infringements. FIA technical delegate Joe Bauer found the skids on the underside of their cars were not compliant with the technical regulations. The part found to be non-compliant is that thick column that runs down the center of the underside of every Formula One car. Part of their job is to protect the underside of the car from contact with the track. When you see the colored skid marks they leave on the track, that's the track surface making contact with the skid, or plank as it's also known. You might remember last season that these parts were the center of a bit of a controversy. It was the Flexi Floor scandal, which centered around championship challengers Ferrari as well as other teams, was triggered by the teams creating flexible skids, which reduced the amount of wear they got when they hit the floor. After every race, 4 cars are submitted to the FIA technical delegation to get their plank wear checked to make sure they're compliant with Article 3.5.9 of the technical regulations. It states, the thickness of the plank assembly measured normal to the lower surface must be 10mm plus or minus 0.2mm and must be uniform when new. A minimum thickness of 9mm will be accepted due to wear, and conformity to this provision will be checked at the peripherals of the designated holes. So basically, you're allowed a total of 1mm of wear during a race. If your plank is worn more than that, then you're in violation of the technical regulations, and that is an automatic disqualification. After the race, Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton and Leclerc were chosen to be checked, and the Mercedes and Ferrari were found to be outside of the allowed parameters. The FIA conducts extensive legality checks in post-race scrutineering, but it's impractical to check absolutely every aspect of all of the cars, and 4 cars are always chosen for this check. With Hamilton and Leclerc disqualified from the race, Lando Norris was moved up to second, with Carlos Sainz taking the final podium place in third. It means Lando could conceivably finish fourth in the Drivers' Championship after scoring 12 points in the opening 8 races. Logan Sargent picked up his first ever points after starting 16th on the grid. Lance Stroll finished 7th, his best result in 12 races. It probably ends Hamilton's battle with Sergio Perez for second in the Drivers' Championship as well. The question that Hamilton and Leclerc have to ask themselves is, was it really worth it? Running lower to the ground does provide more performance, so in theory they did gain some pace advantage. The ground effect floors produce more downforce for very little drag, which is great. It's impossible to work out how much of an advantage either driver gained over the course of the entire weekend. Both teams will have known that if they did get caught with excessive plank wear, it would be an instant disqualification, so they definitely wouldn't have done this on purpose. So how did this happen to Leclerc and Hamilton? Two drivers getting caught out by the same technical rule is pretty wild, so it isn't a leap to assume that there were other cars on the grid in violation of Article 3.5.9 of the technical regulation. I'd go as far as saying that if the FIA had a rule that allowed them to check the teammate of any driver caught by this rule, Sainz and Russell would have fallen foul as well. You just can't make the assumption that this was specifically Hamilton and Leclerc at fault. It's fair to say that given more practice time, neither Ferrari nor Mercedes would have made this mistake. With the United States Grand Prix playing host to a sprint race, the teams were only allowed an hour of practice. With more time, they would have realized they couldn't run their cars that low to the ground and made the adjustments. But this hasn't happened at previous sprint races, so why did it in Austin? Setup choices on a sprint weekend are always a challenge, with just 1 hour of free practice, and even more so at a bumpy circuit like COTA and running a new package, said team boss Toto Wolff. In the end, all of that doesn't matter. Others got it right where we got it wrong, and there's no wiggle room in the rules. It was the track surface at COTA, which is notoriously bouncy due to subsidence under the track, which caught out Ferrari and Mercedes. Both teams tried to highlight the mitigating factors to the FIA during their hearings with the race stewards. They told the stewards that the high wear on the skid pads was probably a result of the unique combination of the bumpy track and the sprint race schedule that minimized the time to set up and check the car before the race. Like Wolff said though, there's no getting around the rules, and Verstappen and Norris managed to avoid a penalty. This is completely on Mercedes, Ferrari, Hamilton and Leclerc. But is their punishment fair? Disqualification for something that gave them a questionable performance advantage might seem harsh, but it is the way it is for a reason. The technical rules and regulations are what makes Formula One what it is. The teams spend tens of millions of dollars a year building cars within those specifications. Breaking them in any way is to bring the competitive integrity of the races into question. The technical rules have always been enforced this way. The teams know this, and the harshness of the punishment for breaking them ensures they are complied with. Unfortunately, Mercedes and Ferrari just have to live with pushing those rules too far. They might have been unlucky to have been the cars inspected, but they still only have themselves to blame. I saw a great tweet that showed just how much of a difference there was between Red Bull's ride height and that of Mercedes and Ferrari. Dr. Obb's tweet shows the ride height of the three teams through the high-speed Sector 1 turns. The Red Bull in the bottom photo is running so much higher than the Ferrari and Mercedes. That isn't just millimeters, that's a huge difference and will definitely have made a big difference to performance. Red Bull played it safe knowing how bumpy the Circuit of Americas can be, and they profited from it. Red Bull struggled a little all weekend, with Max only managing 6th in Friday's qualifying, while Ferrari and Mercedes looked surprisingly strong. Hamilton especially had great pace all weekend, and the new floor for the Mercedes cars was given a lot of credit for it. While the anecdotal evidence of the driver interviews tells us that the floor did make a difference, Hamilton said it leveled up the car pretty much everywhere. The gap between Hamilton and Verstappen at the end of the race is unrepresentative. Max's combination of brake problems and suboptimal ride height hindered his race pace, and if they weren't a factor, who knows how far ahead he would have been. Do you think the disqualification was fair? And should the FIA have checked more cars after finding out that Hamilton and Leclerc were in breach of the rules? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.